If you've ever been filmed doing something embarrassing and you're worried it might leak, now might be the right time to leak it. This is the ArsenalVision Post-Match Podcast. My name's Elliot. Block me on Twitter. Gunner, yeah, it might just fly below the radar at this moment. So if you want to get that out there, just put out that video of whatever it is you did. David Coote's got you covered, because literally as we record this, who knows what other horrors of his life are being revealed. A bit tawdry, honestly, what's happening with that at the moment. We're going to touch on that and the PGMOL, but there is Arsenal-specific stuff to talk about that I think is honestly more important right now and probably a little more interesting. So I hope you're getting through the interlull okay. I cannot recommend strongly enough that you go watch the Chelsea rewatch Clive and I did. We talked PGMOL at the top of it, some Arsenal stuff at the top of it, so you get about a 25-minute pod on just the crisis in refereeing with Clive, but then you get what I think is one of the better rewatches we've had in a long time. I think the Mikel Merino performance alone is worth it. If you are a subscriber on Apple and you're like, well, how do I get video stuff? I figured out a cool workaround. There's a link with a password protection so you can get video stuff if you're an Apple subscriber. And if you're on Patreon, no problem. It all just comes right through. You can watch this stuff, by the way, on your TVs. You can listen to these pods in your regular pod player. We'd love to have you over there, but I cannot emphasize this enough. We're also just thrilled to have you over here. And so wherever you are, as long as we're in it together, then we're here. And I love it. And I couldn't be more thankful. I want to say I got a few emails in the last week, just, nice stuff, saying nice things about the pod. Tim did great, or Clive did great, or Elliot, you were tolerable, and I didn't want to fast forward through your sections. I have to tell you, we are very, very lucky to have you. We get nice messages. We get good feedback. We largely engage in really good discussions with one another. Even when you disagree, you tend to come to us with disagreement in a way that's positive. I learned something from the disagreement. Sometimes it even changes the way I think about things. Not Clive, because he's got it all figured out, but the rest of us. Moral of the story is just immense sense of gratitude to have this community, to have you as a listener. And I know I tend to get a little overly sincere at times, so I apologize for that, but I'm definitely feeling appreciative for all of you this week. So thank you for being here. All right, Tim's on Twitter at Stominator. Hello, Tim.
Hello there. Also now on Blue Sky.
Yeah. Well. Yep, I am as well. And I have to say, look, maybe it'll be Blue Sky, maybe it won't, or Threads, or wherever it is. Maybe it'll still be Twitter or wherever it is. I will tell you this much. I am always in the Discord. I have basically made the Discord my place because I've sort of learned all the creeps and weirdos that are in there, and now they're my creeps and weirdos. And I love the disco boys and girls. And so I find myself there. Tim, the thing I just feel with Blue Skies, it seems fine. It seems good. I don't know how much longer I can follow the group around the internet trying to figure out where we're all going to meet. Like, let's all meet somewhere and do it and be done with it, because it's getting a little difficult,
Yeah, like time will tell. I do feel like I resisted for a few days. Like, I think the mass migration kind of started a couple of days ago, didn't it? And I was a bit like, I'm going to call my jets here, because I did the Threads thing a little bit dubiously. Well, not dubiously, a little bit maybe under duress, but like I don't think that's really popped in any serious way. And I had a conversation with some people who were like, no, this actually, there does seem to be a bit of momentum behind this. There does seem to be a bit of community. And in the UK as well, the Guardian newspaper made probably certainly UK based, like one of the first like really sizable publications, albeit like left leaning, but one of the big left-leaning publication in the UK, saying that they're no longer posting on Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it, which is actually a pretty sizable call. And
it's
I
a big
imagine
deal. I mean,
some will follow their, not everyone. The right-leaning publications won't do that, but I do wonder if it will start this kind of exodus that a lot of us have felt is going to happen for the last 18 months or so.
Yeah, I have no idea. My honest feeling is I try not to evaluate like anything other than where is a community of people I can connect with in a safe and healthy space. And when I say safe, I don't mean free of being exposed to ideas I disagree with. I mean free of actual like vile abuse and hatred. Other than that, I just want to connect with the community. So wherever you are and wherever we can find you and connect with you, that's what we want to do. And for Tim, who gets to go to the women's games and the men's games and be there and has his mates that he meets at the pub and has it as part of his life, maybe it's a nice little distraction or a nice place to go to kill time when you're on the toilet. We all have to do that. But for people like me who don't have that on a day-to-day basis, it is my connection. And so, it matters to me where I go for this stuff. So it may seem like a silly thing to start a podcast talking about what social media app we're going to use. But I know there are a lot of you listening who are in the boat I'm in. We're like, that app and where you go and what we all decide to make the place, that's the replacement for what we don't have by not, being able to walk to the ground every Saturday or every Tuesday or Wednesday. So anyway, be interesting to see how it develops. Let's get out of the social media navel gazing and into the Arsenal navel gazing. And Tim, I don't know about you, but I find this new thing Arsenal is doing of constantly having players get injured tedious and unnecessary. And far be it for me to criticize Edu or Mikel or anyone at the club, but why they decided to do this, I cannot understand. I'm kidding, but I'm not. Benjamin White has gone under the knife. Knee surgery. Sounds like 2 months out. 6 to 8 weeks is what's being put out there. So let's say 2 months, just so we get our expectations in the right place. That probably means end of January-ish back. I don't know if you noticed, but February 1st, we play Manchester City in the league, just a thought. And then, the Champions League knockout phases, assuming we make it there, we'll start up either in February or March. So he's obviously been managing it. He's obviously been playing through it. He's had strapping on his knee. They didn't do it in the summer for whatever reason. They did do it now. Before we get into the impact of it, I'm just curious, do you have any misgivings about the fact that it wasn't done sooner? Do you have any questions about that? Or is that one of those things that only the doctors know for sure what the right thing to do was?
Yeah, I think it is. And usually they do try to avoid surgery. Because we look at it as like, this puts a definite timeline on it now, and that's good. But it doesn't always, as perhaps we've seen with someone like Gabriel Jesus. I don't think it doesn't sound like quite that serious, but usually I think the usual advice is surgery is like a last resort, but I also do think that there's probably a sense in which maybe it would have been done over the summer if Tomiyasu hadn't kind of done his knee. I think the timing of this suggests that he's clearly been managing it for what certainly minimum all of this season. I wouldn't be surprised if a big chunk of last season, but I guess I'm relieved in a way because I think it's been really obvious recently, when he only plays the last 20 minutes against Newcastle. That doesn't usually happen. I don't think we wanted to expose Timber this much either, but I think the Calafiori and Tomiyasu injuries have made it really difficult, and I at least take this as a reasonably positive sign that those two players, or at least one of those two players, is probably on their way back.
Yeah, I think that's probably right. And I think you can maybe revise your opinion of some of the Ben White performances this season based on what we now know is more than just a little niggle, right? There's something here. And I think a fit Ben White is critical because, whatever we think about our attack and the reasons that the attack isn't firing as much as it should, we do think that overlapping fullbacks and fullbacks in general are a really important part of our attack. We saw how influential Calafiori can be in that. And we know that the Odegaard, Saka, Ben White triangle on the right was a huge path to goals for us last season. And this season, you've got a Ben White in and out of the team and playing injured, an Odegaard gone for 2 months essentially, and a Bukayo Saka who's looks like he's been carrying some things here and there and certainly playing through fatigue. So we need Odegaard, White, and Saka fit and at the top of their game, I think, to really see the best of our attack. That's not to say we can't see a strong attack, and that leads me to the question that I think is more relevant right now. We don't have Ben White, but what we do have is Timber. We think we'll have Calafiori back relatively soon. We have Zinchenko. We have Miles Lewis-Skelly. We may have Kieran Tierney after the international break, and we could, in theory, have Tomiyasu. And I'll tell you what, if Tomiyasu wants to make everybody immediately not regret signing that new deal, being fit at this moment, after all the critical moments we could have used him when he wasn't there, if he can be fit now, boy, oh boy, would that really help. If he can find a run of 2 months of being fit for Arsenal through mid-November to mid to late January and get us through this period without Ben White, that is going to be huge. So how do you think about the hierarchy at left back and right back and how we'll manage every 3 days between now and when Ben White is back?
Yeah, I'd like to see Timber get a run there. Obviously, as you say, we're playing every 3 days, so wouldn't imagine he'll play every single one of those games, but hopefully the majority of them. Hopefully he's in a physical shape to do that as well. I really like what I've seen of him there. And ultimately, I think this is probably the position we most bought him for. of all of the positions he can play across the back line. I kind of think the left back thing is more of a, he can play there. We'll play him there, particularly as almost like that Tomiyasu style defender, like that lockdown defender, because he's not going to overlap. He underlaps a bit on the left, but the more I see of him, the more I think, I think he's been brought to challenge and support, mainly to challenge and support Ben White in that right back role. And this is a good opportunity for him. And, the couple of games he played there recently, we all started asking, whether Ben White would get back in the team.
He looked real good on the right. Real good. Yep.
Yeah, he did. And hopefully we're having that conversation in 6 weeks' time again. Hopefully we're sitting here going, well, there's no need to rush Ben White back, and maybe he doesn't get back in the team. That's kind of what I hope. And I guess in terms of the other way we manage this, assuming there are no other injuries in defence, which I won't take for granted, is I just quite like on the left side to go with what we have there and try to keep Timber on the right. And if that means playing, Kivior, if that means playing Lewis Skelly, if it means playing Zinchenko, and there are different reasons why maybe they're not, the absolute gold star kind of choice at left back. I'd rather carry a deficit in one position and and it would be a slight deficit. We haven't seen enough Lewis Skelly yet, but Zinchenko, Kivior, we've seen them play left back very recently when we've been very, very good. So, we're not talking about putting 16-year-old kids in. And Lewis Skelly, his cameos there have looked fine. I don't know what he'd look like over a longer period of time, but even given that none of those are really the top choices, I'd rather we kind of just sucked it up at left back a bit and tried to leave Timber at right back, particularly now Ødegaard's back as well. Let's get that triangle going. Let's get that partnership going a bit, because Saka and Ødegaard are going to play, let's face it, as long as they're fit. So
I sort of agree with you, but I want to throw this at you, right? I think in a dream world, Timber's on the right and either Tomiyasu or Calafiori's on the left. And if we can play that group, I honestly, it's not that we won't miss Ben White, but I would feel as confident in that group as if we had whatever you regard as our first choice. I'd feel really good about that. Once you start dipping down to Kivior, Zinchenko, or Miles Lewis Skelly, I have big questions. Miles Lewis Skelly, just because, first of all, I think he's a midfielder. When he's played left back, it's not that he's been terrible, but I don't think Miles Lewis Skelly looks totally at home positionally and defensively at left back. I think he can do it, which is a huge testament to his quality at 18 years old. But that's that. Zinchenko, I've always sort of liked Zinchenko in the sense that I think he gives us so much in possession that I can forgive a little bit of the defensive stuff. But the last few times I've seen him, I actually think he looks less effective than I remember him at his peak. And I just feel that the team is starting to move away from him, and I'm not sure the manager trusts him. And Kivior, anybody who listens to this knows I'm a Kivior skeptic, at least at fullback. I think at center back, maybe there's a little something there. But as we saw when we had a Kivior and Miles Lewis Skelly left-hand side of the defense, Liverpool ripped it to pieces. So I think having a fit Tomiyasu and Calafiori is huge. But here's the issue, Tim. We play, these are our games until City. Ready? I'm not going to name the games, just going to say the days. Saturday, Tuesday, Saturday, Wednesday, Sunday, Wednesday, Saturday, Wednesday, Saturday, Friday, Wednesday, Saturday, Wednesday, Saturday, Wednesday, Saturday, Wednesday, Saturday. So, you cannot play Timber off an ACL injury last season through what I just described, and arguably can't do it with Calafiori, who I just don't know that he has that durability at this stage. So how do you think the manager should and will manage it? One of those games is Palace at home in the EFL Cup. And maybe that's one where you take a gamble. Maybe you think you could get through Zagreb at home. But depending on our points in the Champions League at that point, I don't know, Ipswich at home. But what do you think? Because I agree with you that Timber on the right and either Tomiyasu or Calafiori or Zinchenko or whoever it is on the left could be a plan. I just don't want to play Timber Saturday, Wednesday, Saturday, Tuesday, for 2 months.
But then we probably don't want to do that with anyone, really.
No, but him in particular, right? Coming off an ACL, you know what I mean? There's some players you might try it with. He's not one.
Yeah, we are some distance away from that now. I
That's
know
fair.
there's still some caution there, but he had his first game back 6 months ago. And to be fair, I think it probably would have been a month earlier if we weren't in the thick of a title race. I think it just became difficult to give him those kind of the minutes at the end you kind of need. So it has been a while, but he's had to manage some issues still this season. So like that doesn't mean all caution is gone, but it is getting further in the rearview mirror. But yeah, like to your point, I don't really want to play anyone in all of those games. Like we're gonna have to get comfortable. We played a couple of games without Rice. We played one game without Rice recently, and like I know we lost the game, but it was okay. Like
Well, we played without him against Spurs and we won.
Yeah, away.
But
Spurs.
they're so shit. It hardly counts.
Yeah. And so like even like Saka, Erdegaard, like we're not going to be able to play like Erdegaard in every minute of all of these games. Like, don't get me wrong, I'm sure that he's in the Saka category, right? Like if he's fit, he plays type thing. But a lot of these players, and we're going to have to find ways to win. And like maybe Kai Havertz doesn't start one of these games. He's playing a lot of football at the moment, and he missed the last international break in October, and then he just came back and played every single minute for us, and getting his head smashed open and all of that. So it's not entirely without precedent. Like, of course, like hopefully Tomiyasu can be fit and start to take up some slack at right and left back. I'm not sure. I don't really want to see Partey at right back that much, to be honest. And so yeah, I kind of think if there is something to manage with Timber, then yeah, we're going to have to manage it one way or the other. But yeah, I'd just like to see as much continuity there as possible, because that's an area of the team that has been kind of broken up, and I think Calafiori and Marino kind of in the stride a bit can hopefully transform the left side as well, because I think we've been missing that.
We got a little fortunate with the way some of these Champions League ties break in terms of where they fall, the games they fall between. Not that there's ever an easy game in the Premier League, but they're not the worst. What I would say is if we can get 3 points against Sporting, Monaco, and Zagreb, it would be handy, because maybe we can rotate more than we might ordinarily do for Girona, which comes 3 days before City come to the Emirates, right? So that would be a game you'd target. Another injury concern, though, Tim, because there's always an injury concern, it feels. This is like the absolute worst season ever in terms of just not being able to get these players fit, is Bukayo Saka. And there's a couple of things I want to talk about here. One, first, though, let's just talk about the Saka injury. Rumors of a 2 to 3 week absence. Mikel, can I just get your take on his comments post-Chelsea?
Sure.
Because his exact comment was, when asked if Rice and Saka were injured, he said, well, it doesn't look good because those are two players who never come off, and they both had said they had to come off. So I assume it's bad. It was a weird wording, the way he said it, because it made it sound like he was almost saying like, well, they better be injured, or why were they asking to come off? You know what I mean? It was kind of like what's the cause for this? But I'm inclined to believe, Rice might have a broken toe. We're not totally sure what the deal is there because the manager wouldn't confirm it, but that's the rumor. Saka, again, not clear. But what do you think of the Saka news? And like, this was tough. 2 weeks, maybe he could start against Forest. 3 weeks, he misses Forest and Sporting. And that's like a very different diagnosis. So how important is it that we get Saka all the way fit and all the way healthy? And what do you think about his injury situation right now? And then I got to follow up for that, actually, but I'll leave you there.
Yeah. And I think it probably is time to get him properly fit, because again, last international break, and then we lost him for the Bournemouth game, and then you kind of manage him, you get him back over the line. He's such an important player for us that the second he reappears, you kind of go, oh, phew, there he is, he's back again. And he's so good that he always looks good. But, he keeps getting these knocks, and, I don't know. Let's say, for example, he's fit for the Forest game, like maybe with Erdegaard back as well, and Erdegaard not going away with Norway, like maybe we can start Saka on the bench for that one,
So can I stop you for a second?
There. Yeah.
Because this was going to be my follow-up. Tim, I totally agree with you. And my whole thought going into the season is, wow, a fit Jesus. We've got Raheem Sterling. If we need to rest Bukayo in a game where he can get totally fit, home to Forest, for example, let's go with Jesus or Sterling. What a great amount of depth we have. But the way it's playing out for Jesus right now and the way it's playing out for Sterling right now, I don't know that we have the confidence in that. And so are either of those players you trust right now? Forest all of a sudden looks like a tricky game. I'm not going to say the hardest game, but tricky. The whole idea was supposed to be a fit Jesus, and a Sterling finally gave us some depth where Saka could be rested, but it hasn't played out that way to the point where I'd almost prefer Leo on the left, Martinelli on the right, and Kai through the middle over a Sterling or Jesus. So if Saka was going to be given some extra days off, how influenced would you be by the fact that neither Jesus nor Sterling seems particularly convincing right now?
Yeah. I'm with you. Like Martinelli on the right, Trossard on the left, or the other way around. Like I think that's fair enough. I do think again it depends on how he's been training, and bearing in mind he's well out of the England picture. You know, there's a few weeks for Arteta to look at Sterling, maybe talk to him a little bit, and just be like, look, Saka might not play in the next game. You've got like a week to convince me that you should be starting the game, and you know, here are the reasons that you're not a fixture at the moment, and have like quite a frank discussion with him, maybe about that, because it's still a small sample size with Sterling. I think we've all been disappointed, and I think Arteta's showing you what he thinks so far. But it's not unrescuable. It's still early. It's still a small sample size. He can turn it round from here if he wants to. And there is a chance to say to him, look, I'm going to start you against Forest, but if you're not doing it by half time, you're gone, and you can probably forget about any further starts unless it's a dead rubber, quite frankly. So, you know, you could look to motivate him that way. I don't know how Raheem Sterling responds. I mean, Arteta ought to know. He's worked with the player quite a long time before he came to Arsenal. So, you know, it could be not quite last chance saloon. That's too dramatic. But it could be like, look, I'm giving you a chance here. I'm showing some faith in you. And like for Sterling, it's like if this loan move doesn't go well, like you're done at the top level. You're just done. Like no big club is going to buy you after that, and you know you're going to have a problem anyway on that salary, and this is just going to make it worse. Like the next few years of your career, unless you are just happy to sit on your contract at Chelsea and take the money. And he might just think, do you know what? I'm 30. I've had a good England career, won some league titles. Not going to get back in the England team now, so yeah, I'm going to sit here and count my cash. Like that's kind of fair enough. But you know, like that, another motivating factor for this conversation is like, what do you want the next 2 to 3 years of your career to look like, and how might that shape your legacy and things like that. But like this loan spell, one way or another, is really going to define the next couple of years of your career. And there aren't many options other than maybe Saudi Arabia from here if you don't do it here. So could have a motivational chat like that. But the fact is, at some point, someone else is going to have to play on that right-hand side. And hopefully with Ødegaard there, that'll make it easier for them to do so. Because to be fair to Sterling, at Bournemouth when he started there, it was without Ødegaard as well, and so it wasn't. You know, he wasn't playing with the full band, as it were. So, you know, it's we're gonna have to do something there, because if Saka just keeps getting kicked, like, you know, he is eventually just going to break, and so we do have to be mindful of that. I'd like him to start against Forest, but you know what? I'd like him in March, April, and May more, I think.
Yeah, I would say the other thing with the Bournemouth game is he only got 30 minutes because we went down to 10 men, but I thought he was starting to look like our most dangerous player. I'm not going to sit here and be like it was a memorable performance, but it was a performance that I think was trending towards looking pretty good, at least from an attacking standpoint, and we never got to see the logical conclusion of that. You know, it would be neat. It would be neat to see Martinelli on the right with Ødegaard and Timber, you know, and see how he performs with what I think would be a better support network around him. That would certainly be interesting. And with his pace and ability to get to the byline on his stronger foot, could he put in some interesting balls for Kai Havertz and maybe a Mikel Merino in the box? Like, just a thought. You could have the in swingers from Odegaard. You could have the out swingers from the byline from Martinelli. It could be a neat little dynamic there. I really do think what I took away from the Chelsea rewatch was, my goodness, Marino finally, I think, flashed some absolutely elite skills and capabilities. And it's that ability in tight spaces to take the ball and turn and face under pressure and deliver to the next man. And there was a moment where he took it surrounded by players, and I'm thinking, just wall pass it back to Saliba, wall pass it, and he did not do that. And he turned and he gave it to Odegaard, just a little 3-yard pass, but Odegaard then had a ball to Saka, who was going to walk in on the keeper. And Odegaard, the one time, of course, right, gets the pass wrong. It's a little to the right, and I think Cucurella is able to cut it out. But so I think with Marino flashing that, it also makes me wonder, Tim, does Declan Rice get a little more time to get all the way fit? I mean, if it's a broken toe, like you want that fit. I don't think he looked like himself. And I really believe for their goal, a fit Rice who's not fatigued, who can explode off of both feet, explodes out into that space that Neto was charging into. He's Roy of the Rovers. He wants to go after the ball, right? And to see him as passive as he was in that situation, that's not Declan Rice to me. Not to say he was terrible or anything, but I just think we've seen a more playing within himself version of Declan Rice. So would that be another thing you'd consider if given how Marino looked in that cameo, and if he's fit and ready to go, that maybe Rice would take the time he needs to get all the way back?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, he's another one, right, who went all the way in the Euros. We haven't seen the real Declan Rice this season. We know that because we saw the real Declan Rice last season, and this isn't, it's not been terrible by any means, but this has been about 70%.
He's also playing with a rotating cast of partners, to be fair, too, right? Odegaard, then no Odegaard, and it's Kai, and it's Leo, and it's Partey, or it's Marino. I think football is about partnerships, and like if you look at Caicedo, when Caicedo was playing with Enzo, everyone thought he stunk, and then Enzo gets taken out of the team, and all of a sudden Caicedo finds partners that he really thrives with. So a little bit of that as well, maybe.
Yeah, definitely. And, he operates largely on the left, and the left back, again, keeps kind of changing.
Yeah,
so,
good point.
Suboptimal conditions for him. But I definitely think, again, that's the other thing about Odegaard coming back. Like, don't get me wrong, it's mainly his quality and the fact that we don't easily replicate his particular qualities elsewhere, but it just gives us a chance maybe in terms of some of those midfielders like Rice, no Marino, no Odegaard for a little while. We had to play him probably when he could have done with having a bit of a breather, and usually, like, I have to be honest as well, like when he didn't play the Inter game, I didn't think we enormously missed him. And last season I think it would have stuck out like a sore thumb, but it didn't quite this time. And I think that says something as well, if we're honest with ourselves. And with Marino as well, I think he has some of those Rice-like qualities, certainly in terms of like his physicality. But to your point with what he showed at Chelsea, I know when I say I got some flack for saying it, I think it was from like one person, but I said on like the last pod I was on, I think, you don't get in the Spain team with headers and tackles, right? Yeah, if you're in the Spain team, it's because you can play. And we saw a little bit more of that from Marino in those tight spaces, maybe a little bit of press resistance as well. And, Rice isn't really a tight space player. He's a big space player. He likes galloping into those big spaces, which is also very, very effective. But yeah, Marino's just got that kind of small space. And to your point, like that pass he gives to Odegaard when he first receives the ball, you wouldn't guess that was where the ball was going to travel, but because he can turn quickly and protect the ball very, very well. And I think that's another thing that's very important that perhaps we don't quite have enough of on our left side, is that ball protection sometimes. So I think of, for example, like the Trossard ridiculous back pass at Bournemouth that got Saliba in trouble. If you've got someone over there who can just hold someone off and protect a bit more and keep the ball, I think that's really, really valuable. And we perhaps miss a little bit of that. And of course, Calafiori, I think, can certainly add that as well. Just a little bit of that. Okay, there's not necessarily a space here to drive in. There isn't a pass on. I'm not like, this isn't like a goal scoring move, but I can keep the ball and I can protect it and I can get it back and we can go again. Like, and we have that on the right side. Like Saka and Odegaard can both do that as well. White can do that. Timber can do that. So I do think we miss a bit of like maybe ball protection on the left-hand side. And I think Marino can certainly provide that. and so can Calafiori. And I do think that will make quite a big difference.
I got to level with you. I'm not as obsessed about the names, although there's some names like Saka and Odegaard that you simply can't replace. I think what we need over this next run of those games I listed that come every Wednesday, Saturday is a bit of continuity. It's not that this team has, we've missed X player. Of course we've missed X player. But I think what we've missed even more is continuity. If you look at the run where Arsenal supporters were singing "Stadiums are empty everywhere we go" for 3 months, I think we put out a pretty consistent 11. And I know Clive doesn't like to talk about first 11s. I'm not talking about first 11s, but consistent groups and pods and partnerships and players knowing where they're supposed to stand. I think it makes a big difference. And I'm hopeful that we will get to do that to some degree. I almost didn't want to touch on this topic, Tim, but I think we have to at least mention it because why not? Harry Kane opened his mouth this week. That's not news. It would have been news if he closed his mouth. What I meant, though, is Harry Kane spoke this week and threw his England teammates under the bus about not showing up for the England camp. He said, yeah, it's a shame this week, obviously. I think it's a tough period of the season, and maybe that's been taken advantage of a little bit. I don't really like it, if I'm totally honest. I think England comes before anything, any club situation, he said before sweetly making love to a poppy. Look, he can pound his chest and be patriotic, and it's all well and good. And I'm sure there are people that'll say, Elliot, don't put down that comment. That means a lot to me, or my national team means a lot to me, or the England team means a lot to me. Like, fair enough. But he is throwing under the bus players that are going through a much harder, more rigorous set of fixtures than he will be going through. He is a player who has been coddled and given everything he needs in the England setup to thrive. He is a player who's going to have a winter break in his domestic league, which these players will not. And these are players who, oh, by the way, are injured. Let's not forget that. So I don't know, man. I just don't like Harry Kane, and I can dislike Harry Kane because of the tribalism of him having been a Spurs legend, helping guide them to not winning anything. But I understand that there are people with England loyalty who have time for Harry Kane. So what do you think about the comments about him pounding his chest and waving the flag and showing his true patriotism at the expense of his England teammates?
I actually don't have a huge problem with it because from his position, first of all, he's the England captain. In fact, I think it would be a very dodgy thing for him to say that club comes before country, regardless of what he actually thinks. I'm sure he does actually think that, and particularly playing abroad now for Bayern Munich, there's no real reason for him to have an emotional connection to that club in quite the same way. But I think there's a bit of additional context. I mean, first of all, these November qualifiers, lots of people have pulled out. I think it's 8, and that picture is reflected around Europe as well. Odegaard's not going away with Norway, and it is a little bit just because of where we are in the calendar, and we're in the November internationals, and these are slightly less consequential for a lot of countries. And in the England respect, there is an additional context here. I mean, first of all, we're coming into a period where the club calendar, as you pointed out, is about to get brutal. But from Harry Kane's perspective, I think England are in a weird position where they've got an interim in charge. Everyone knows he's going now. The next guy's been appointed, but the next guy doesn't start till January 1st. Apparently, Thomas Tuchel's not going to be at either England game. Apparently, he hasn't had a conversation with Lee Carsley, so there's clearly there's a let's not talk about this. I will stay away until these games are done. And you know what? I think there is an element to which the teacher's away, the kids will play type thing. It's a bit like maybe if you're some of those England players, it's I don't need to impress Lee Carsley. These are his last games in charge. And then he's going back to the under-21s. And Thomas Tuchel's not here till January the 1st. So it's almost yeah, like I say, when the teacher's not there, what do the kids do?
Yeah,
kind of thing. So there is a bit of expedience, but I also think it's and I think also, Elliot, the thing is, one of the things England did get right under Gareth Southgate was the culture thing. That was a big thing because a lot of players from 5-10 years ago will tell you they didn't like playing for England. It was cliquey. and there were club rivalries, etc.,
Yeah.
etc. And one of the things Southgate did sort out was that players liked playing for England again. And I think Kane, as captain, maybe senses that it's potentially vulnerable at this stage with a new guy coming in, and he's trying to keep it together. But I do think there is just a lot of players just being like, "Wow, this doesn't really matter for my international future until January the 1st. Tough club calendar." And by the way, I don't necessarily think they're doing anything wrong or underhanded with that. They're managing themselves, and that's what they have to do, because that's where football is now.
Yeah, to be fair though, I mean, like, Cole Palmer's injured at least at some level. We know he got a kick on the knee from Lisandro Martinez, and played through it against Arsenal, but I don't know how much it was affecting him. We know Saka and Rice are injured. Trent is fully injured. I think the problem when you make comments like that. So Tim, I see your side of it, and like, I'm not asking him to say club over country. He could say country over club. I think he could also say, hey, England is the most important thing to me. It's my priority. It gives me great pride to be captain of this team, captain of England, and I'm excited to play with any England players who are fit and available for the team. Like, there are ways you can say it, but like, there is the reality that like the players will see these comments and they will take it as a bit of a shot.
Yeah.
And frankly, like, part of being a captain is projecting the right thing to the fans, but part of it is sending the right message and being a good teammate. And like, it reminds me of the gif, like, what's he saying? Fuck me for, right? like these players are in the teeth of a very difficult period of the season. He's right about that. And he's calling it taking advantage. But what I would ask Harry Kane is, what is the value of a half-fit Cole Palmer and a half-fit Bukayo Saka and a half-fit Declan Rice and a not-fit Trent Alexander-Arnold trying to drag themselves half-fit through these games, both for England and for their club? It's better if they get fit. You know what I mean? So
it is.
I don't know.
But I think also we should understand he's probably not calling out every single player. But like 8, 9, that is an unusually large amount. And if
It's a large number. Yep.
And
No
if this
denying
is
it.
March, that doesn't, and it's close to the Euros, and Euro squad being announced, that doesn't happen one way or another, right? A few of these guys would be out, definitely, but also I think in terms of, shall we say, like, politically, it's actually a reasonably savvy time to do it if you're going to do that, because there isn't another set of internationals until March. So if you do that now, there's 4, and he doesn't play in England anymore. Like, none of those guys see Harry Kane for another 4 months, and a lot of them aren't there anyway. So even if you are like, I don't know, Saka or Rice or Palmer, and you're annoyed with what Harry Kane says, like, they're all going to forget about that by the next time they see him in March. So I do think there's a bit of expedience to it as well.
It's, of course, tempest in a teapot, whatever thing, to some extent too. Like, the fact that we're talking about it at all, if this wasn't an interlull first week, like, we wouldn't be talking about it, but it's in the news. I figured I'd ask about it, and we've given it more airtime than really it demands. My honest opinion is I don't love it. And maybe there's a little bit of defensiveness and tribalism baked into that. I also don't think it's the end of the world. And you're probably right. Like, the players won't care. I do want to talk Edu replacement. I think we got to talk about the David Coote stuff a little bit too. Like, it's the interlull and that's happening. It's like, how do you not talk about that? So we'll talk Edu replacement. We'll talk the Coote stuff. And I think that will do it for today. I'll say this, by the way. I think the Nottingham Forest game is the most important game of the season. Now, that's cliche because your next game is always the most important. But I think there is a feeling that this is where the run's going to start. You look at those fixtures between now and the City game at the start of February. This is where we go into points accumulation mode. This is where you're going to see the real Arsenal. The skeptics are saying, what evidence do you have to believe that Arsenal are going to go on a run? The people that still have confidence in this team, and I put myself into that bucket, believe we're going to see a consistently excellent Arsenal during this run. And you know what's funny about it, Tim? Wasn't it the Forest game that started it last season in January? Jesus dragged us through it a little bit. It wasn't maybe it wasn't the first win, but it was, and from there we then went on to the 5-0s and the 4-0s, but there, or maybe Newcastle game had been before it, but there was that not great kind of tight Forest game where Jesus actually scored and was really good.
Twice, yeah.
So, and you could see something similar here because this is a good Forest team. I really think win this game, get on a run, and the season can really look very different in 2 months' time. But this one, This is the one that people are going to use to be like, you told me we were going to go on a run and we blew it. Or people are going to be like, see, here's the real Arsenal back. Now we can go on a run. So we'll see about that. All right. We're going to talk Edu. We're going to talk David Coote. But before we do either of those things, I do want to tell you that if you are trying to watch those videos that are geo-locked in your location, if you're trying to watch football matches when you're out of the country and you want to use your streaming service, if you want to sign up for streaming services that are less expensive in other countries than your own country, you can use a VPN to do it. And the VPN to do it would be NordVPN. NordVPN is the one I use, and it's real simple. Why? The speeds are really good because you still want your internet speed to be very fast, so they're good there. There's threat protection, which I like. And if you're a football fan, you are inevitably eventually going to wind up on a website where you are under threat. So you need the threat protection. And it's an app where you just one click and you're connected and you're protected, right? So it works on iPads and Android tablets and Android phones and iPhones and PCs and Macs. And so really easy to do. I fully recommend NordVPN. I have a very positive experience with it. And at some point, you're going to need a VPN if you're a football supporter. You just are, because of the way you're trying to watch stuff that's not available in the location you're in. You can get an exclusive NordVPN deal by going to nordvpn.com/ArsenalVision, and you'll get a huge discount off your NordVPN plan, plus 4 additional months on top. So a huge discount and 4 additional months on top. And here's the best part. It's completely risk-free because there's a 30-day money-back guarantee. So go to nordvpn.com/ArsenalVision, nordvpn.com/ArsenalVision. And this podcast is sponsored by BetterHelp. BetterHelp is not online therapy. It's therapy that just happens to be online. Very, very simple. Therapy is important. You should do it. If you can find a therapist in your area and you can drive to their office and you can sit with them face-to-face and get therapy in person from a therapist that you really connect to, I think that's wonderful. And I did it, and I can't recommend it enough. But maybe you don't have the time. Maybe you don't have the resources. Maybe you don't have the comfort level. Maybe you can't drive. My mom can't drive anymore. Does that mean she should never get therapy? Like that's a process that was important to her whole life, right? So there's so many reasons and ways and times therapy can be valuable for you. The holidays are coming up, and I know they are arguably the most joyous time of the year. I know there's a lot of people for whom they're the hardest time of the year. If you're dealing with loss, if you are struggling with something hard that you're going through, these times of year when we're supposed to be centering joy can actually be the time that makes it the hardest to get through. And having someone who's there to empathize with you and has the skill set to work through that with you is valuable. So if you do want to try getting some help and doing it online is the way that you think it'll be most convenient and available for you, then do it with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/vision today. Get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/vision. Tim? Is that enough of that?
Indeed.
Nailed it. Edu, replacements. Monaco or Real Sociedad? That seems to be the question. Which one do you have your money on?
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Like maybe this happens all the time, and I just never notice it or care because our sporting director's been there. But it does seem like a bit of positioning maybe going on, like some other guys moving around. Maybe it's complete coincidence. I don't know. I guess if you were telling me it was going to be one of those two guys, I think the Sociedad ones, just because we've done business with them, a few times, and that makes me wonder: is there already a good relationship there, etc., etc.? Obviously, Arteta is from the Basque region. Don't know what that counts for, if anything, but at the same time, he doesn't leave till the end of the season, I think. But again, as we've seen with Edu himself, usually you leave a position like that, it's 6 months gardening leave or so. So that's, unless it's someone who's currently unattached, that's probably a reality anyway. The reality, I think, is going to be that the full-time new guy is not going to be in place until the summer, probably because of the whole gardening leave thing. We've also been linked to the guy whose name is very similar to mine at West Ham, Tim Staten. I can't remember exactly how it's
and I should mention
spelled or pronounced.
The big news that's sort of more in the news lately, and this is constantly updating, is Simon Rolfes at Bayer Leverkusen, right? And hard to argue as someone who put together an invincible team. So, great there. You mentioned the Sociedad links. Marino, Odegaard was there. They've been very good under his leadership. I don't know about Monaco as much. I'm just not as educated on it. And West Ham, they just flat stink. So but I don't know if that's because of a talent issue or a coaching issue or a combination of both. I kind of want to take this a different direction though, Tim, because I don't think I wouldn't suggest that either of us can speak in extreme detail on the philosophy, approach, and huge successes and failures of Rolfus or any of these guys, right? So I would say it this way. I think the more important question is, how important do you think this role is and what is important about it? Because to me, I don't know that you need this to be the genius mastermind of the club anymore. We've got a really good squad. We're putting finishing touches on, not rebuilding from the ground up. You want to try to continue the direction of travel. You want some continuity. I think you need someone who can close a deal, help make the pitch to the players, but really he's an extension of Mikel's vision and the leadership of the club. So what are some of the things you think this person is going to have to do well? And how important a role do you think this is in terms of we've got to get it right?
Yeah, I think we're in steady pair of hands kind of phase. I think the phase is where you really need a very like strong, involved, excellent sporting director. Either when you're where we were 4 or 5 years ago, maybe when you're in the middle of a knockdown rebuild type of, well, not at the start of a knockdown rebuild, and you've got loads and loads of work to do, and you've got a talented coach but an inexperienced manager who's like never done transfers before. Like that was a very important period for Edu. When Arteta arrived, and it was like, I want this and this for my team, and I need you to help me find it and negotiate it and everything. And so that was a very, very important time. The other time it's really, really important is maybe the situation we were in 2 or 3 years before that, where you've got I kind of think in modern football this won't happen too much more often, but perhaps when you need a bit more of a check and balance. You always need checks and balances, but perhaps when you're in a situation where it's like, okay, this guy's running everything and we're not sure if he should be doing that, but we don't know like how willing he is to cede any of the, like the situation we were maybe in like 2016, 2017, that kind of time. Those are the two times I think like an incredibly good sporting director are really needed. I'm not saying we don't need one now and that any old person could do it, because there's still some politics, there's still some machinations going on, there's still like plenty of movement in that back room, which happens, in corporate structures. But at the same time, can't dismiss out of hand what's happened. Like Edu and Vinay have gone within like 3 or 4 months of each other. That is pretty seismic. So there's a lot of maybe some power stuff as well there, and that doesn't have to always mean that everyone's fighting and hates each other. It's just like, you're all kind of jockeying for power, and then one tree grows a bit more, gets a bit more of the sunlight, and so the other one goes, okay, fair enough, I'm going to go somewhere else. So there are still some like dynamics, some upwards managing probably required as well. So like you still need a savvy operator, definitely. But I'm with you. Like, we don't need millions and millions of players at the moment. We don't need to reconstruct the squad. There's contract stuff that's going to be very important for the next sporting director, because some of those contracts we did 18 months ago, they need doing again, and that is almost, well, not even almost, I think that is the most important part actually to kind of do. And then there's like a couple of positions, like if we can unearth that incredible striker, great, like that's kind of next level stuff. But I'm with you. I think this is like savvy operator, steady pair of hands time. But I don't think, when we were going for Monchi and people like that, like it's, we're not in a fixer-upper situation, I don't think.
No, it's got to be someone that Mikel trusts and respects. I think that's really important. And the reason isn't because it has to be a person that a person that gives in to everything Mikel wants. I think the reason it's important is it needs to be someone that Mikel will listen to if they have a differing viewpoint, right? I think Mikel gets a lot of things right, and I would tend to trust his judgment, but nobody gets everything right. And you need people around you who will not just acquiesce to everything you want to do, but bring a counterpoint. Make the argument for why your instincts might be wrong on this occasion.
And
Go ahead.
and sometimes that is about the upward management thing though as well. Sometimes that is going to be going into bat for Mikel when it comes to, look, we found this player and we want it, like we want him, like release the purse strings type thing. I know this is all a bit old money, but I remember listening to a story about how we got Gilberto Silva, where Arsene Wenger and David Dean were watching Brazil together, and Arsene Wenger was like, "Oh, Gilberto, he looks incredible," kind of thing. And David Dean just flew over to Brazil and was like, "How much money do you guys want?" Like, it's like Arsene Wenger wants this guy, so I want this guy, type thing. Because so that, again, not all the time on everything, but sometimes it's that Mikel wants this. I trust him. Can we like break the wage structure, or a bit like, I'm not sure how much convincing they needed to buy Declan Rice, but do you know what I mean? That's £105 million, a lot of money, and they must have made several bids before it got to that stage. And who was it who was like, look, this guy, next level, pay the money type thing? That's going to be stuff that they've got to do as well.
Yeah, just someone who can coax Mikel to make the right decision when it may not be evident. If there's a good bid for a player, Mikel's kind of inclined to hold on to, but we really haven't been giving him minutes, encouraging him it's okay to sell this guy because trust me, I'll get you a replacement. I'll get another player. And, mutual trust is important. Here's the other reason it's important. I remember once Arsene Wenger made the comment, I'm responsible for all, 300 people that work at Arsenal or whatever, right down to the tea lady. And I remember being like, I don't want you to be responsible for that. Not because I don't think you're a wonderful, thoughtful, intelligent guy, but because I would like you to organize the defense better, work on corner kick defending. It's the point that I think sometimes managers do fall into the trap of thinking the whole club has to be run by them, when they should have people around them they trust to run the stuff so they can really focus on, because the game is getting harder. It's getting more tactical, right? Player management's getting more complex. Tactics are getting more complex. Game preparation is more important than ever, right? Training's more important than ever. You got to be focused on that. And so if you trust the director of football to carry his message up and to get things done, then he may not be as inclined to feel he needs to be across everything that's happening because he has a trusted lieutenant who's doing that stuff with him. Look, the other thing is the parts that we don't know, right? The things we don't see. But these directors of football, they have to be able to pal around with agents and powwow with other directors of football. And when they walk into the room in these, European football conventions, like people want to talk to that guy. People look up to that guy, right? You want to be the respected figure in the room. You want to be the person that like an agent will tell their player, this guy will take, knows what he's doing. He's a good guy, gets the best deal for the club, but players like him too. Like there's a lot of that soft skill stuff. Like I don't think Edu is a rocket scientist, but I think he has exception. Anyone who's been in the room with Edu, and I got to meet him at a fan event in LA, and it's just a chaotic fan event. His soft skills are off the charts. He's tall and broad and fit, and he's got an electric smile, and he makes you feel seen when he's talking. You know what I mean? He has those soft skills. So I think
he could be in Wolf of Wall Street. Do you know what I
mean? Yeah. And so it is really, I think, a combination of those things: being trusted enough by Mikel that he can push back on Mikel when needed, trusted enough by Mikel that he can carry Mikel's message up to the Cronkies and Tim Lewis and Richard Garlick and get a yes when a yes is needed, and has the soft skills to go out in the world and close the things that need to be closed.
Yeah, and look at a bit of background on Edu. I mean, first of all, he's player relatively recently, right? And I do think that counts for something. But when Edu first kind of started on, because he did have to retire slightly early, those knee injuries, he got a Valencia, caught up with him. And I think he kind of retired 32, 33 and was a bit like, well, what do I want to do? Don't think I want to be a coach. And he got interested in the director of football thing. And I think he spent time in like organisations like Fortnum and Mason and PricewaterhouseCooper and all of that. And like he did a lot of like corporate visits because like he came from the football world. And I think maybe influenced by some of his own experiences, his pretty chaotic transfer to Arsenal, notwithstanding, I think he was a bit like, how do I, and particularly it must be said in Brazil as well, like he looked at it and he was very much like, how do I professionalize this? How do I make this a bit more like, the corporate world, as it were, which I don't think football always is, even though that's clearly the way it's going with all the money in it and everything. So like he took that seriously. Like he's not just an ex-player that is bored and wants like an ambassadorial role. Like he's really thought about this, and to get the level of trust he got from Chite in Brazil, to the point that Chite said, like, a condition of me managing Brazil is that I take this guy with me. Like that's Chite's got like 20 odd at the time 25 years experience of coaching, and he was like, I want this guy who's like, I don't know, 37, 38 years old. Like, not only do I want him, I demand that he comes with me. Like that's like pretty big kudos, actually, for someone who's like, they could be father son. I think, given like the more nearly, given the kind of age difference. So he's thought about this a lot, and I'm not surprised he's taking on the role he's going to take on. I think he's very serious and he's very ambitious about what he wants to do, and like I don't think. He didn't become a sporting director because he's like, I'm a bit of a crap coach, so what else can I do to get me out of the house? Like he really wants this role and he wants to make a mark in it.
Yeah, and I do want to clarify one thing, because I said, I don't think anyone thinks they're a rocket scientist. What I'm saying is, I don't think director of football is a job for geniuses. I think Eddie was obviously a bright guy. That's not my point. My point is, I don't think what you need in this is someone who can like solve multivariable equations, like Goodwill Hunting, it's C math equations floating through their head. I'm saying I think soft skills are arguably more important at this stage of the project, and given the people that we have in place. So we'll see. We'll see how it pans out. I am also not of the opinion that if we don't fill this spot right away, like, we won't get any January or summer business done, and we have no idea who the targets are. And like, first of all, we had targets before this. We probably made progress on them along the way. Like the extent to which it stinks to lose Edu, I won't dispute, but I also think the extent to which it has a chilling effect on our ability to run the football operations is maybe overstated.
Yeah,
So
definitely. Like their list for next summer will have been made already, basically. Beyond that, yes, it's a gap you really need to fill, but I'm pretty sure the plan for the summer market is already there.
Yeah, and just so we're clear, right? Like, there's always going to be opportunistic buys that you can't plan for. Like this, there's no question in my mind Sterling was not the plan, right? So sometimes you just have to do that. But let's finish on this then, Tim, because there'll be time to come back to that when it starts to, I think, become more concrete. And as we get closer to January, by the way, like, we are going to want to think about this a little more closely. But the last topic is just what's happening with the PGMOL. And can I get just first your like 30,000 foot view on the David Coote thing? Like, every 5 minutes, something worse seems to come out. I want to be cautious what we amplify, because there are unsubstantiated rumors out. Like, video is video, and he hasn't disputed the video. No one's disputed the video. There are some other unsubstantiated rumors that get into stuff that's, I think, way worse. And so I will say that I am bothered by it, but I also want to be careful about how strongly I respond to unsubstantiated rumors that are circulating on social media. So what's your 30,000 foot view to just what he's been caught doing, basically, in the lifestyle he seems to have been living?
Yeah. Let's deal with that kind of first video, because everything's in it and it's undisputed, right? And there's other stuff, and also we don't know if there's anything else, coming down the track. I think it's difficult to talk about the other stuff until we know a bit more. But I think it's one of the, and I think the pod that you and Clive did prior to the pre-watch kind of nailed this a little bit. What I at least hope this leads to is some sense of change. And I listened to Rory Smith was on the Anfield Wrap, I think, this week, and he was saying a lot of what Clive said, i.e. that the PGMOL has become a bit insular, it's become a bit boys' club. It's become a bit kind of ivory tower. And I think the phrase Rory Smith used was, some of these guys are taking bigger roles than the casting director probably intended. And I think Howard Webb is doing a horrible job.
Yes.
PGMOL, I'm so unimpressed. I really thought that taking it over from Mike Riley was a bit of a free swing. And my word, no, I think he's got his intentions all wrong. I think he sees it as a bit of a laugh, as something to boost his profile with. I agree with you, Elliot. I think on one hand, some of the fan stuff is hysterical, and people have lost like what the. You know how the word literally doesn't mean literally anymore? I feel like corruption is going that way. Like, football fans have just started using it for, I don't agree with this decision. And
Yeah.
This is corruption. It's like, no, it's not. It's
what used to be, that's a bad call, is now
it's corruption.
The PGMOL is corrupt.
Yeah. But at the same time, like, you can't just first of all, don't just take like the worst of it as the overall, as the consensus, the loudest of it as well, because a lot of people feel this way. And I really felt, the chant for Michael Oliver on Sunday, the Michael Oliver, it's all about you. One of the other things Rory Smith said, which was more in line with what you were saying as well, where he was saying, like, it almost doesn't matter whether the integrity question is true or not. If people think that way, you've got a problem and you have to solve it. And I thought the Michael Oliver "It's All About You" chant on Sunday, that shows you in unison what the people who pay to go to the games think at the moment. And same deal, it doesn't even matter if they're objectively right. Maybe that was mega harsh on Michael Oliver. Maybe he's not interested in all of that. And I do actually have some sympathy for referees at the moment, in terms of, I think Howard Webb is making their job harder because he's asking them to get involved in more stuff. Like, even if you want to go into the actual rules of it, booking Kai Havertz, right, that was the wrong decision, because you're not, when someone's concussed or bleeding from the head, if you read the rules, you don't send them off the pitch. Right?
Because they need to be tended to right there, because they could potentially be in distress, and you're not supposed to have them. Yeah,
and they might not be in their right mind as well. Like, the whole point with concussion and head cuts is, like, you don't send them off the pitch. You stop the game. You stop everything, and you bring. So don't, like, go waving Havertz off the pitch. Blow the whistle. Stop the game. But anyway, I'm getting too much into weeds there. But I think it does show that something needs to change about the attitude here. I think Howard Webb needs to get a lot more serious. I think he needs to, loosen some of the strings and some of these silly like Kai Havertz does not need to be booked for bleeding. That does not need to happen, and stuff like that. But I think really this has to be a bit of a reckoning, because however much responsibility they bear, this is a crisis for the PGMOL. It requires crisis management, and it is a bit overdue. I'm sorry that a man's career has been set on fire for it, and I hope that's all it is, because some of the other stuff that's coming out seems quite unpleasant. Maybe stuff that not even sure is really in the public interest at this stage.
No.
But I guess, Elliot, can we slightly table the discussion maybe to finish? Just because I didn't agree with you on the referees from abroad thing.
Okay, well, do you want to get into that then? Yeah. Okay. Well, so before we do, let me just say this. Okay, set the David Coote thing aside just for a second. What I will say is, he seems to be a person whose life had spiraled completely out of control, and there is a part of me that as much as maybe this makes me a boomer or whatever the hell it is, like, almost feels bad watching his life be so publicly laughed at as it is burning to the ground. Having said that, some of the unsubstantiated rumors point to behaviors that, if they are true, changes my perspective about whether I feel any remorse for him at all. And I'll leave it at that. But I will say this. There's no chance a man this out of control wasn't known to be this out of control by his employers. None whatsoever. Nobody this screwed up doing this much shit this publicly based on what I'm starting to see come out. There's no chance they didn't know. And it points to the PGMOL having a permissive old boys club attitude of, oh, there's crazy Coote doing what he does. He's a wild man, and laughing it off because they must have known what was going on.
It's
and they were willing to
police-like, is it not?
Yes, and I'll yep, that's exactly right. But I'll tell you,
what did Howard Webb used to do?
yeah, but it's even worse than that in this respect. I am sorry. Maybe this is conspiratorial in my approach. This is the shit that's come out. How bad do you think the stuff is that they've been able to keep quiet, that hasn't come out? Like, you can't tell me this is the only secret, the only dirt under the rug. This isn't the only skeleton in the closet. So what I would say is the PGMOL, you know what the best disinfectant is? Sunshine. Let's see it. Let's tear the lid off this thing. Let's understand how broken this institution is, how corrupt the people inside it are, how unfit for purpose the organization is, and let the Premier League finally see if we do not step in and do something. This group that we've given so much power with so little accountability threatens our whole product. Because if you can't see that, if you've got someone this out of control, who's in an elite, Tim, it's not like there's 72,000 Premier League referees. There's 20 of them?
20.
And one of them's 22, and one of them's this dude? You couldn't find 22 better people than this dude? So I got to tell you, I think there's worse. I think there's stuff we don't know. I think Sunshine's the best disinfectant, and the Premier League needs to protect the brand by tearing this thing to pieces. That's just, maybe I'm just being hysterical. So tell me why I'm wrong about that, and why foreign referees shouldn't come into the game, because we don't want them in our English game.
So I just to take it back a step to the reckoning. I definitely think a lot of people, myself included, have probably been too protectionist in terms of criticism of referees. Like that, they are like monitored heavily, like they've got assessors and all of that, like coming out the wazoo. It's just nothing ever seems to happen.
And yet somehow a guy with dime-sized pupils is refereeing games every Saturday, and no one figured it out.
You know what actually changed my perspective on it? Because like on one hand, it's just like, they do get like abuse, and I can understand why David Coote wanted to vent a bit. I'm sure he has that opinion of many Premier League managers, probably justifiably so.
That's the least bad thing he was doing, by the way, criticizing Klopp. It's all the other shit.
It's doing it on camera.
Yeah.
But at the same time, probably like mollycoddled a bit too much, just because I think a lot of the criticism is hysterical, and we spotlight them. The media massively spotlights them. Sky Sports News has a show on Monday morning called Ref Watch and all of that. But what kind of changed my view on it was I was talking to someone I go to away games with about what they do with youth footballers, because his grandson is 9 years old, very talented footballer, is spending time in different academy systems. And I'm sure Clive will kind of talk to this with a lot more kind of knowledge than I do, but he was talking about how like his grandson's in an academy and he'll be with like Charlton, and it will be like it's like 8-9 years old. It's like, right, brilliant, you're here 3 months, we do more trials, you're all back on trial again, and if you don't pass that trial, you're gone. They do. That's 8-9-year-old footballers, right? It's really brutal. And so I kind of think that maybe referees can handle, like, a friend of mine, West Antone, some of you might follow him on Twitter. He was talking about like restructuring in terms of like FAs have regions in England. There are regional FAs. Every region put up your best referee. So we get a spread from all over the country, and we have like a promotion relegation system with referees. So each regional FA says, yep, this is our guy. He's our best, she's our best, whatever. And they go in, and then there's like a proper point system. Maybe these are our top 3 guys. And if this guy doesn't do it for a couple of weeks, he's out. Next person up type thing, and have like a proper meritocracy, a proper geographical spread. And I'm interested in that idea. But here's why I don't agree with you on the
I can't bring it.
The foreign ref thing.
Get nationalistic on it. How nationalist are you going to go? Let's see. Let's hear it.
So it's actually in reverse. So there's 2 reasons. One, first of all, I just don't like the idea that other countries do a good job of producing referees, and the Premier League comes over with its money and says, France, Farmers League, piss off. Like, we're taking your referees. We've done such a horrible job that your league
You've got the
doesn't
makings
deserve to
of
be
an amazing
refereed.
Monty Python skit. I'm sorry to stop you, but there's a Monty Python sketch in there somewhere. They had come up to a castle, except instead of trying to sack the castle, they're trying to take the referees. Okay,
But
sorry. Keep
yeah,
going.
yeah, but it's like, League they don't need good referees. We'll take those off you, right?
Yeah.
Like, see you later. So, like, I think other leagues, if they've done good things getting referees, they should be allowed to keep them. And that comes into my other, because and other people would be like, well, we've got like the best foreign coaches, best foreign players, and all of that, and I get that. But the issue with that for me is that being an elite football coach and an elite football player, I think that is like, you have to have innate talent to have any chance of doing that, right? You have to be born with something. So I think that separates. Like, I think Pep Guardiola was born with something that made him predisposed to being possibly the greatest coach of all time. I don't think that's true of referees. I don't think anyone is born to be a referee or born with innate refereeing talent. I think that's about how you develop them and how you coach and all of that. And we need quite a lot of them as well. Like, we need to start like farming them type thing. So that's why I don't, because like, if Mo Salah is on the market, you go and buy Mo Salah. Like, there isn't a player in your country who's maybe Bukayo Saka, but you know what I mean? Like, there isn't a player in your backyard that is going to do what Mo Salah does. So go and get him. Whereas with a referee, that's about something a bit more grassrootsy. And I'd rather, spend the money and the resource on that. And perhaps producing better referees rather than kind of barging into other countries and going, thanks for that, we'll take him, see you later.
Look, the one place we can agree is you don't have to go to another country to expand the talent pool of the referees. Nope. You know what I mean? You just have to go like 20 miles further south of Manchester. You know what I mean?
We're
like,
a small country, but we're not that small.
We're not that small. No, right. So like, don't get me wrong. I don't think you even need to leave the UK to get better referees. Like, the talent pool just needs to be bigger. There needs to be more professionalization of the way this is run. There needs to be better oversight and more transparency. I see it differently from you. I get your point, right? Like, oh, we just rock up with our money and take all the refereeing talent that's in France. But like, I think if you are going to live in a global economy where people have freedom of movement and freedom of work opportunity, and people want to go where they can make the best living for themselves and their family, I quite like the idea of people having that right and that option.
Yeah, and ours don't mind going to UAE, refereeing games over.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, it absolutely is true, right? And like, it is weird because we don't think about it in other industries. We're not like, oh, London's taking all the best bankers from France. You know what I mean? It's not like, where are all the good French bankers? They're all in London, and because London's like the head of, the global financial center of the world. Like,
and like engineers, like, we don't produce engineers in this country anymore. So yes, we very much do go to other countries with a checkbook to get them.
Yeah. So I mean, and like, I'm not dismissing your point, Tim. Obviously, there's merit to it, but I simply think that this is the world we live in. Some people would like to go back to a different world. As long as we live in this world, and the Premier League. Because the other thing is too, Tim, this is kind of the point, right? They don't need to go take all the best French referees. How about 2 good French referees and 1 good Italian referee and 1 good Portuguese referee and 1 good Spanish referee?
We've got an Australian referee.
Yeah, there you go. He's terrible, but that's another story.
I didn't say he was the best Australian referee.
No, send us your worst referees. How about that? Yeah. I mean, like, I think what I'm trying to say is, it wouldn't take much. Do something. You know what it reminds me of? Did you ever see, what was it, Forgetting Sarah Marshall? And what's his name?
Russell Brand.
But Rudd, the less said the better. But Rudd is trying to teach the main male character, I'm getting all this wrong, like how to surf. And he's like, all right, you're doing too much, do less. And then, so finally he just lays there not moving. He's like, well, you got to do more than that. Right? That's how I feel about the PGMOL. It's like, I'm not asking you to invent time travel. I'm asking you not to have completely incompetent, potentially corrupt morons, refereeing the league with the most money in the world. Anyway, we're starting to fall apart here a little bit, but I think the Premier League is the one who needs to be held accountable at this point, because it's their brand, it's their league, and they have chosen to let this old boy network from Manchester play a role that I think is the most important. I will say this: I don't think there's a more important referee in any sport than a football referee, because of how low scoring the game is and the ability to literally give a goal or a man advantage. The ability to say, I'm going to make one team play with one fewer player, or the ability to say, I'm essentially going to give an 85% chance of a goal to one of the teams in a sport where one goal is frequently, most commonly, the margin of the outcome of the game. So it's not just that the talent isn't good enough, the accountability isn't good enough. It's that unlike other sports, where you might have enough referees out there, or their influence might be low enough that you can survive it. Like a bad referee in the NBA can make a big difference. We know there was a betting scandal with a referee in the NBA, but like when there's 120 points scored, also like it can be overcome. You can't overcome it. As we saw in the 2005 game against United with Mike Riley, if the referee is bound and determined, you're not going to overcome it.
Yeah, I mean, I guess on that, like maybe one sport where they're more important for a couple of reasons is boxing. Because the referee might stop you dying for a start, but there's
weird. Is there any corruption in boxing?
That's exactly what I was about to say. What's the most corrupt sport in the world?
Yeah. So there you go. Well, I think we should leave it there. I mean, like, candidly, these international breaks lead to sometimes going a little deep on topics that we wouldn't otherwise go as deep on. But refereeing is certainly one that I have a feeling we'll wind up talking about again. I mean, hopefully not. You know what? No one deserves more than Arsenal right now to get a bit fit and to be a little free of refereeing controversy. So we'll see if that happens. He says, knowing it won't happen. Okay,
maybe
we'll leave it there.
Refereeing controversy in our direction. I'd be okay with that.
You know what? Honestly, I would take a bunch of shit penalties given to us down the stretch here. Clive and Paul will be on in upcoming episodes. Check out the Chelsea rewatch we did, and we did a little PGMOL stuff with Clive on that. And again, just thanks for the kind comments recently, and thanks for the less kind comments. Just let us know what you think. We'd love to hear it. Okay, Tim's on Twitter at Stillmanator. Right?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. And on Blue Sky, and we're we're on all the things, and one of the things will become the thing, and then we'll just hopefully all be there and enjoy each other's company. My name is Elliot Smith, the Black Man. We love you, and we will talk to you after Arsenal 10 for us. No.